Today, we're going to do some performance testing on the one and only Cushman Desperado Mad Max Edition. Now, what makes this golf cart special is it has a little diesel kicker engine under the seat, and it has a massive 420cc
big block
Hemi engine hanging off the back. Yep, it has two engines, a diesel engine and a gasoline engine. You know, sometimes these things happen when you just don't get enough sleep. We've all been there, right? At first glance, this contraption may appear to be something right out of a horror movie. There's no denying it looks scary, and the truth is, it is scary. It turns out the true purpose of this old and dilapidated golf cart is to test different horsepower engines, and right now, it happens to have two engines. Currently, our main focus is on the 420cc Predator engine, but just for fun, today we're going to run both engines because, well, it would be a crime if we didn't. Oh, did I mention that this is an electric golf cart? Yep, I forgot to mention that, didn't I? I reckon that our longtime viewers already knew that. But if you're new to the channel, well, that's yet another thing to wrap your head around. So, despite the fact that this buggy has two internal combustion engines, the thing that actually makes this contraption move is an electric motor. And best of all, there are no batteries in this electric golf cart. Nope, we don't need heavy and expensive batteries. We can generate all the electricity that we need with either the gasoline engine or the diesel engine or both engines. Welcome to the only YouTube channel worth watching. So indeed, we're generating all the electricity we need with an alternator and a super simple low-cost control circuit. Definitely check out our previous episodes if you want to take a deeper dive into the magic that makes this electric golf cart move without using batteries. Now, before we get going with today's shenanigans, well, we need to address a problem that arose last week during our first road test with the 420cc engine. So last week, we had this monster out on the street and it was chooching at full speed, and all of a sudden we lost power to the electric drive motor. Well, long story short, after some troubleshooting, it was determined that the little PWM power supply that controls the alternator had apparently failed. So let's take a closer look at what really happened. This is the questionable PWM power supply that we're using to control the alternator field current. Now, this power supply was originally intended to control a medium-sized electric motor in a children's electric vehicle. And, according to the datasheet, this little guy can handle a massive 20 amps. So what that means is, this thing is not working hard in our application. You see, we never asked this thing to deliver more than 8 amps, and realistically it probably doesn't supply more than 5 amps once the golf cart's up to speed. Here's the block diagram I was able to find for this gizmo, and right here is where our accelerator pedal connects. Now, if we take a closer look at the block diagram, well, we can see where the electric motor in the children's car is supposed to connect. Now, the most important thing about this diagram is they're showing a Schottky diode right over here. Actually, this diagram only shows one diode, but in fact there are two diodes. Now, the purpose of this diode is to prevent the back EMF from this electric motor from damaging the circuitry over here. The bottom line is, the power supply we're using is not overloaded, and it has the necessary protection to keep it from getting damaged from back EMF. So, what's the problem with it? Now, we're using this power supply a little bit different than what's shown in the diagram, and instead of an electric motor over here, we have an alternator. You see, we're using this power supply to modulate the electromagnetic field strength in the spinning rotor that's inside the alternator. So, the good news is the electric motor is an inductive load, and this alternator is also an inductive load. So even though we're not using the power supply as intended, the load we're putting on this power supply is the same type of load. In theory, this should work fine. So my vision sucks because I'm an old guy and I have to use a microscope to work on these surface mount circuit boards. And unfortunately, there's no way the camera can see the amount of detail I can see with this microscope. The good news is all the solder joints on this circuit board are adequate, and there's no evidence of cold solder joints. Right over here is the dual Schottky diodes that protect the circuit board from back EMF, and if we look at the bottom of the board, we can see that the circuit is reinforced with an extra layer of solder. And there's no physical damage to this circuit board trace. This dual Schottky diode thingy checks out good with the meter, and actually everything checked out good. I spent a lot of time on this guy, and I couldn't find a fault with any of the larger components. So I powered this thing up on the bench, and it worked fine. It looks like we have a mystery on our hands, and we need to put this thing back into service to do some more testing. Now, this diode and these 3 FETs use some kind of adhesive thermal paste. In other words, they were pretty much glued to the aluminum enclosure. So, on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, well, there's no place I can get this special type of thermoconductive glue. They definitely don't sell this stuff at the dollar store. So, in order to put this thing back together, I had to modify the case by milling the cooling fins on the outside flat so I could use proper fasteners to secure the components to the case, which is also the heatsink. Once I milled and drilled the case, then I applied thermal paste on the backside of each of the components and reassembled the power supply. On this gizmo, well, it's okay to directly attach the FETs to the enclosure with a bit of thermal compound, and we don't have to worry about using a silicone or mica insulator. Fast forward a few minutes and we have the engine running, and now we can test the power supply. I gave the accelerator a bump, and look at that, the electric drive motor spins. So I have no idea what's wrong with this gizmo, and it seems to be working fine now. Fast forward 24 hours, and we have both the little diesel engine and the big 420cc engine wired into the electric drive motor. Now, the bridge rectifier diodes in each of the alternators allow us to wire both of them to the same electric motor without causing any problems, so no worries there. Now over here, we went ahead and mounted the electronics in this airtight enclosure to keep the dust and dirt from getting on them. This power supply without the cover on it is the one we just put back together, and it's going to control the alternator on the diesel engine. This other guy will control the alternator on the big 420cc engine. The reason we're using 2 power supplies is, well, they have to be calibrated differently. This one is calibrated so it can get the most amount of power from the little diesel engine without causing it to stall. And this one is pretty much maxed out because on the 420 engine, we really don't need to calibrate the system. The 420 engine has plenty of power to spin the alternator without any issues. Now, since we're dealing with 2 very powerful systems, we added a second emergency stop switch to cut the feed to the alternator in an event of a mishap. Now, the E-stop switches allow us to shut each system down individually. However, if the brake pedal is pressed, well, it'll trigger this switch, and that'll turn off this relay, and thus cut the power to both alternators. And that's the minimum level of safety that's required on something like this. Since this contraption uses drive-by-wire accelerators, it would be insanely stupid not to have a way to shut this thing down in the event we lose control of it. Now, in our simple control system diagram, we do show the e-stop and the brake switch over here. Anyway, the plan is to put the questionable power supply back into service and see if we can get it to fail again. Because at this point, we don't have an answer of why it stopped working, other than it was covered with a lot of road dirt, which may have been the problem all along. So as it turns out, with this big engine hanging off the back of the Desperado, well, we can no longer tilt the seat back in order to start the little diesel engine. So, off camera, I built this high quality wooden chair to sit on. Now, it's not a Recaro, but it should get the job done. And for now, it'll provide easy access so we can start the diesel engine and fiddle with this stuff if we have to. Now, the good news is an electric start kit for these little diesel engines are available, and we'll be converting this diesel engine to electric start in the next episode. However, until then, I'm going to suffer a little bit and sit on this homemade seat thingy. Alright, let's have some fun with this contraption and see what it can do. Now, just in case you didn't know, well, this monster is extremely loud and we have to haul it out to the cornfields in order not to disturb anybody. The nice part about being in the middle of nowhere is the cornfields are only a few minutes away by Chevy. And we've arrived. The Desperado's been fitted with its custom seat and it looks like there's not a lot of traffic today. Perfect. Let's bring this animal to life. Okay, that's pretty much it. This thing's powered up and ready to go. So this accelerator is for the diesel engine. Let's give it some motivation. Yep, the diesel kicker engine is fully functional and that's good news. Alright, let's confirm the gasoline engine is connected into the system. This other accelerator is for the gasoline engine. And we're moving on just the gasoline engine. Perfect. So we're going to do a series of 0 to 15 mile per hour acceleration runs. Now, we chose 15 miles per hour because it's a relatable number that other folks with either gasoline or electric golf carts can compare their golf carts to ours. The little diesel engine starts off a bit sluggish, but we're picking up speed. And finally, 15 miles per hour. Well, that was painfully slow. You know, I don't think we'll be winning any races with this diesel engine. So let's place that number on today's scoreboard. Hopefully we can do a lot better than that. Now let's try the 420 engine. Now on this run, we've capped the engine RPM to 2600 RPM because this is a data point that we're really interested in. Alright, let's go. And we got the 15 miles per hour pretty quick. The gasoline engine is about 8.5 seconds faster than the diesel engine. Not too shabby. Let's see what the top speed is. So the top speed is 25 miles per hour. Now, despite this thing being unstable and noisy, it's really fun to drive. Let's take a look at the scoreboard. So yeah, the bigger gasoline engine performs much better, and keep in mind we were only running it at 2600 RPM. Now, the top speed ended up being 25 miles per hour, but here's something to consider. Top speed is limited to how fast the electric motor can spin, and at 25 miles per hour, well, the electric motor was spinning at 6000 RPM, which is close to the point where the electric motor is going to self-destruct. So it's nice to know the top speed, but realistically, this thing shouldn't be driven faster than 20 miles per hour. Alright, just for fun, let's see how fast this thing can go with both engines. Oh yeah, having the diesel help out makes a huge difference, and we shaved 3.5 seconds off our best speed so far. Let's add that to the scoreboard. Now, today we're collecting performance data and we're actually trying to replicate last week's unusual failure. So far, the Desperado is performing perfectly. Now, for the rest of the testing, we'll only be using the gasoline engine and the diesel engine will go offline. Alright, let's run the big 420 at 37 to 3800 RPM and see how that affects our 0 to 15 mile per hour acceleration numbers. So that's very interesting. The Desperado got a little bit faster. Now keep in mind, the engine is not directly connected to the drive wheels, and the power from the engine has to pass through the alternator first, and then it's passed on to the electric drive motor. We pretty much figured that the alternator was maxed out, but apparently spinning it faster got a nice bump in speed. Now on the 420 system, we overdrive the alternator by 180%, or in other words, the alternator spins 2.8 times faster than the engine. So, when the engine's at 3600 RPM, the alternator is spinning at 10,080 RPM. Now on the smaller 212cc Predator-powered system, with the exact same alternator, we overdrive the alternator by 110%. Yeah, we have less of an overdrive, And the reason for the different setups is simple. We used whatever pulleys that were available. Now, spinning the alternator fast does help improve its efficiency, but I have no idea how that calculates. It's all very interesting though. You know, sometime in the future, I think we may have to modify the drive system on the 212cc powered club car. Now, if spinning the alternator faster helps with acceleration, well, what would happen if we spin the alternator slower? So that's exactly what we did, and we lowered the engine speed to about 2200 RPM. And go! Now, I have to apologize. For some reason, I pointed the camera away from the speedometer, and I'm not sure why. Anyway, I missed the target number, but no worries, I did manage to capture some data. So it took 24.5 seconds to get to 21 miles per hour. That's completely random, but I did manage to dig through my other data and I was able to compile a special scoreboard based on 0 to 21 mile per hour acceleration at various engine speeds. And here we go. So right away we can see the engine speed indeed affects the acceleration performance. Now here's the most important thing to consider. The drive-by-wire throttle calibration remained exactly the same and it was pretty much maxed out. So for the big block 420 engine, we can operate the Desperado at different engine speeds without having to recalibrate the throttle, and that's because we have a lot of power with this engine. The little 212cc engine would not be able to do a spread like this without recalibrating the throttle each time. Maybe that's all confusing and mumble jumble, but the bottom line is a bigger engine is always better. After collecting the data we were interested in, we spent the rest of the afternoon trying to replicate the failure we had last week, and I'm sorry to say we were not able to get either power supply to fail. So, I guess that's good news. The twin-engine Cushman Desperado has an intimidating appearance, that's for sure, but once you realize the machine is actually an engineering test vehicle and we just keep piling parts on it for research purposes, well, then it starts to make sense. The data that we collect from doing experiments on this thing will ultimately filter down and be applied to the more civilized version. Now the big block 420 engine is definitely a winner when compared to the small block 212cc engine that we're currently using in the much nicer club car. Unfortunately, the big engine will not fit in the club car without radical modifications to its aluminum chassis, so that's a bit of a problem. Now, the 140 amp Jeep Liberty alternator seems to be a good match for the 420cc engine, and we don't need to use two of these alternators. Actually, using two alternators would end up wasting a lot of power. Instead, it would probably be more efficient to use something like a 200 amp alternator with the 420cc engine, which we may or may not do. The good news is, the twin-engine Desperado is definitely going to be getting a lot more testing because we're actually using this monster to develop the Arduino-based control system. So, look forward to seeing a bunch of specialized gadgets and thingamabobs being tested on this unusual contraption. Well, I had a lot of fun today, and I hope you did as well. We'll see you next time. Until then,